You're not going to want to miss this episode of the AI Show where Timm tells us how to ramp up our custom NLP tasks with Verseagility. Make sure you tune in. Hello and welcome to this episode of the AI Show. We've got a special guest, Timm, to talk all about how to ramp up your custom NLP tasks with Verseagility. Timm, tell us who you are and what you do, my friend.
Hi, Seth. Thanks for having me today. My name is Timm. I'm a delivery data scientist at Microsoft based out of Germany. And what I do here is I work together with our strategic enterprise customers with focus on NLP tasks and solutions that end up being in production.
This is awesome. So a bona fide real data scientist, not like me, that plays one on TV. I'm super excited. Tell us a little bit about Verseagility. What is it? How can people use it? Let's get started with Verseagility.
Yeah, let's get started, definitely. To give a quick intro about Verseagility, this is a toolkit you can see here on the screen. It's a GitHub project. So my colleagues and I, we faced the situation that we're doing things over and over again, the same things somehow, especially when tackling NLP tasks. And that is once we get on a project, for example, and we want to provide some classification models, we always spend quite a lot of time setting up our infrastructure and get things going, set up our experiments, like you can see here in that image. So it always takes a while until you actually can get to the fun part, and that is, building models for NLP tasks. And then we also thought, most likely that's not only the case for us, so also for our customers and people out there as well, so developers who just enjoy tackling NLP tasks. That is why we took our time to build kind of a toolkit that saves you time and helps you to focus on the actual NLP task.
That's really cool. So basically, you kept running into, because every project, I feel like in machine learning or any project in general, whenever you start a new project, you do file new, there's a whole bunch of things that you have to set up. Basically, this is intended to make it a lot easier to make these kinds of NLP tasks a project. Is that correct?
On point, exactly.
All right. So what does it actually consist of? What are all the goodies that you put in there?
Happy to give you an intro there. So once again, what you can see in that illustration is kind of illustrating the process, how you usually go in NLP tasks. So you always have, you finally get your data, or you find your data, or you collect your data, then you always have to set up environments, your pipelines, then finally some experiments, you prepare your data, then usually NLP tasks can be quite messy, so you have to do some data cleansing. Finally, you get to the model training, and then you already have to bring it into production, so make a deployment. And then the iteration starts, and then you usually don't have time anymore. So what the toolkit consists of essentially is a component for all of these things. So what we bring is a standardized template, which you can deploy to Azure. So get going with infrastructure as code. That's the first thing. Secondly, you can get scripts that help you to solve your NLP tasks. So for a separate script for a different task, but you can start it with a central wrapper. And last but not least, you get project configs. So that you can, let's say, document your task in a central structure and also versionize that as needed.
That's cool. So it's basically everything you need to follow this process that we're seeing here on the screen, which is a standard NLP process.
Exactly. Or any data science process, how you want to have it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it feels like you've told us a lot of it. Can you show us how it works?
Yeah, sure, of course. Quickly, so the tasks we're going to cover for now, which are supported by the NLP toolkit, are binary, multi-class and multi-label classification, named entity recognition, and question answering. And that's what we're going to dive into now. So you have the repository here, and your requirements here. So of course, that's what you need as well. And what you find here in the source folder are, let's say, all the components that somehow, let's say, when you build them together, make the use cases at the end of the day. So I would say let's jump into VS Code. So what do you usually do here? You start over with a project file. So for example, you want to do a project for Microsoft Forum data. That's a config file here. And that's a config file you can prepare as needed. So for example, if I want to bring some data and I want to do classification and the others, I don't need them at the moment, for example, I just remove it. And then you can go in with that. What we also support, for example, is here you have different environments, so dev environment and prod environment, because that's relevant at a project. And yeah, that's your central config file where you start your project.
Sorry to interrupt. I want to ask a couple of questions. That's okay. First, can you press Control Plus a couple of times to make that a little bigger for my old eyes here? And then the other question is basically this config specifies the kind of NLP task that you want to do. Am I getting this right?
Correct. Exactly. Yes.
Okay. And it goes all the way from the thing that you want to do, which is the tasks, where the data is, what kind of data type it is, and then where you want to deploy it. So it goes from the actual beginning to the end. Is this right?
Yeah, so basically that's a starting point, and this config file is essentially going to control the script once you run it. So this is essentially what we recommend doing in the beginning, and of course, going from the repository, you want to set up your infrastructure as well. So when we go to the Azure portal quickly, so when you're in the documentation of Verseagility, you click on the deployment for the ARM template, which you find in documentation, and then you have these resources here, and all of them are automatically going to be deployed to your Azure subscription, so you don't have any efforts in setting up the infrastructure. So then you have both components. You get the code from GitHub, you deploy the code to the infrastructure components to your Azure subscription, and then essentially you have almost everything you need. And of course, you have to bring some data, very important.
Of course. I mean, so let's go back to the config file, because I have a couple of questions about maybe the data. Like when you say the data, does the data have to be in a specific shape, or is there anything you have to do for that?
Exactly. So we have a standard file format for Verseagility, which we defined, which is going to be, let's say, collected by a backend service, which is part of the template. Because one important thing is definitely we don't only support normal text files like a CSV file. Rather, we also do document classification and email classification. So sometimes when you bring a bunch of emails, you drop them into a pipeline, and yeah, there is actually a lot of valuable content in these emails. So often you have documents from customers just like, hey, please find attached, best regards. So that's not very valuable. So you're going to find that in the attachment, and that's what we have to consider as well. Yeah, if you just have a CSV file, for example, and you want to do classification and NER, you can transform that also with a notebook which we prepared for you. So just load your data set, and yeah, you can use the notebook to bring it into the right shape.
I see. So basically, if you have your data, there's some notebooks that you provided that will shape the data in the way that Verseagility wants.
Exactly.
Okay.
Correct. Yes.
That's cool. All right. So how do you run all this? So the first thing I want to, and let's show our faces so people can see me asking. So the first thing I want to ask is basically you have to run the ARM templates to get the infrastructure. Then you have to prepare the data. If it's already in the right shape, that's great. Otherwise, you use the notebooks to shape it in the right way. You describe the actual tasks /tasks you want to do. And once you do that, how do you actually run it?
Okay, so of course, what you need to do is, first of all, make sure you have all the requirements set. That's why we have a requirements txt, and most likely you also have to log on to your Azure subscription using the Azure CLI. So what we have here, we already have the virtual environment started. So all the dependencies are already loaded. So we can get started. What we're going to do now is, as you see here in the source folder, we have all the tasks here, which we need, or all the skills, for example. And how you're going to trigger it is you're going to find these scripts in the deploy folder. So there is a training script, which we're going to open quickly and have a glance at it together. So of course, first of all, we're going to load quite a lot of dependencies from Azure ML, because that's where what Verseagility is built on as well. So we leverage the Microsoft ecosystem here. We are going to load some parameters which you can bring. So for example, your project name, of course, then a compute name if you have multiple computes, so remote power on Azure. And then you can also say whether you want to do data preparation. So usually we first have to prepare the data and then submit the training to a remote compute.
Got it.
Exactly. Here you can see how your config is going to be loaded. So yeah, the central component of the toolkit. And yeah, then you get going by loading your workspace. That can either be, if you work locally, with a config file, or also enterprise readiness with a service principal, for example.
Got it.
And yeah, that's how you can see it here. So first of all, if you say you want to do data preparation, we go into this section here. Then a preparation task is going to be executed. If that's finished, so we have the entry script for the preparation here. Once the preparation is done, the prepared data set is going to be registered and available for training. And if you activate training, you're going to go into this step here, where the training happens, where you also pass your parameters you want to have for the model.
Okay, so as I'm looking at this, I want to be sure that this is basically a really fast way to bootstrap enterprise-grade machine learning processes, specifically with NLP. Now, we talked about the data, we talked about the infrastructure, we talked about the bootstrapping and the running of it. Now I'm curious about the actual machine learning that's happening. Did you write your own custom machine learning models, or using other frameworks together?
Yeah, of course, we always want to use the latest of the greatest, who also other data scientists love. So of course, we reuse a lot of things that are out there. So let's quickly go back to GitHub, because there it's a bit more visual. So here's basically our tech stack. So we have at the bottom, we have AML, we have Kubernetes for deployment, we have Docker, and of course Python. And then in that area here, that's where it's going to be, or that's where it gets interesting. We support different frameworks that data scientists, especially focusing on NLP, really love. To get started here quickly, Flare and Spacey, great frameworks for named entity recognition. We have Gensim here for especially for topic modeling, or also question answering based on Best Match 25. And then we have these two components here. So transformers, so pre-trained models based on PyTorch. So quite big models that help you to accelerate your NLP task, and available in different languages. So yeah, Hugging Face Transformers is definitely a place to stop by if you want to have pre-trained models.
This is cool.
Yep.
So basically, you've built the entire infrastructure together with state-of-the-art NLP frameworks and put them together in a sensible way to get a reproducible kind of, and now I feel like I need to say ML ops. You basically created a template for ML ops to do NLP work on Azure ML. Do I get that right?
Essentially, yes. So the cool thing is that we generally support also retraining. So there is no full MLOps process, let's say, built in Verseagility, but we also allow retraining as we also have a Cosmos DB in our ecosystem. So, for example, if you have it in production and you do some relabeling, they're going to be sent back to the Cosmos DB again. And for example, in your next training round, you have more data and you can have that again. So this is basically your template to get started. Not a full ops process, but definitely extendable and supports different loops.
That's really cool. So can you give me a sense, and I know we usually don't talk about the customers the stuff that they do, but can you give us a sense of what people can do with this kind of actual real world applications?
Totally, yes. That's where it also comes from, of course. So we kind of saw a pattern working together with our customers that, especially in the support unit of the customers, they are flooded by support tickets, incoming emails, and things like that. And it's hard to cope with that. So you need a lot of manpower. It takes a lot of time to respond to these emails. And of course, there are also customers who get frustrated at the other side because they wait for a response. So our customers often talk to us like, hey, we need to automatize this so that we at least can cover the, let's say, simple cases and build kind of an automation behind it. And yeah, for the most part, there are user-generated content like support tickets or emails, and that's a typical setup. And some of our customers, they want to have it integrated in their email system, for example. We also have customers who want to have that integrated with their dynamic system, so more CRM, and also just have it as a REST API that a service can call it. So that's what makes it flexible.
This is cool. So basically, any place where you have free-form text, you could superimpose intelligence, and you already have data everywhere to be able to do this kind of training.
Exactly. Yes.
Well, this is awesome. Anything else to add, my friend?
No, that's it so far.
So this has been really cool. Where can people go to find out more?
So there are different things that you can try. So of course, make sure you go to GitHub. It's a public repository. Make sure you check it out. You can also even try it locally if you don't have an Azure subscription. So we don't want to limit it to cloud applications. So that's, let's say, the central component. And another thing is, yeah, we linked all the other frameworks we support here as well. So make sure you check them out as well. We are very grateful that there are many people out there working on such great things, which we then can just reuse in a model, as a model in our toolkit. And then also, if you want to check it out, how it looks like in action, you can go to the demo here and yeah, try it out how it looks like a bit.
Well, let's see what it does. I'm interested. Can you control plus a couple of times, and then let's see what this looks like in action?
Yes, let's do that. So yeah, just have an example or some example tickets for you. How you can, let's say, use it as an API. So we built a very simple front end here based on Streamlit. Make sure you check out Streamlit. It's a great framework to build data science demos. And yeah, if we click submit here, for example, for this support ticket, so we use typical support tickets that might occur in the real world. So there's a person having a problem with his Windows, for example, and maybe he has a virus, and yeah, he or she wants to speak to Bill Gates maybe to get some help. So what you see here is the classification. So that's basically what comes back from the service. And we clearly classify this here as a protect, so Microsoft Protect, anything like antivirus or a Defender or something like that. If we scroll down, we also extract entities and highlight that here a bit. So we see we can somehow extract information like error codes or customer numbers, and that's where a lot of value comes into play, especially for our customers if they want to automatize, so enrich their support tickets with information we extract from an email. And also what we have here that is based on a ranking algorithm, best match 25, where like historic tickets that might have helped to solve a case get automatically recommended. So the subject matter expert working in the support unit can just say, okay, we had something like that in the past as well. I can just reuse that email and you get much faster replying the request of your customer. So yeah, we can try one more maybe.
Let's do it.
What's doing here? Another example. Okay. So here we have once again, no, let's take another one, not only protect. We don't always have virus problems.
Here we go.
Surface, fantastic. So yeah, there is someone having problem with his Surface, a great device. So yeah, switching to the front camera. So once again, with the classification, looks good. Also very high confidence score. That's nice. Some entities extracted and some answers that, yeah, might have helped to solve the problem. Another cool thing is it's multi-language, so it's also a great thing about Verseagility. We don't always do things in English, especially I work a lot with German customers, yeah. So they want to have it in German as well. So can try that out as well.
Let's do it. Das ist unglaublich.
Yeah, very good. Das ist unglaublich.
That's the only German I know. Let's see what it looks like.
All right, so here we, once again, yeah, Defender, they always have security problems. So Defender is deactivated. Hallo Leute, ich habe jetzt alles versucht, jetzt bin ich am Ende. So this customer has real problems here. So yeah, even gives an error code, which always helps. It's also recognized as an error code, which is great.
Cool.
So yeah, we can definitely work with that. Right, jetzt. So now that's the daytime. So I want to have it now. He needs urgent help. Okay, if we scroll down a bit, you also see one more thing here. That's a JSON result, and that might be very interesting for developers. So that's when you build the API with Verseagility, this is what you're going to see here. So so you send a request to a REST API, which we can also have a look at again on a notebook, for example. And this is what you get back. So for every task you have, so task 1, classification, you have the result here. So in that case, protect with a high confidence score. Then for task 3, NER, with a list of results, also where it comes from. So the most part comes from Spacey in that case. We also support text analytics here, which is also a great cognitive service you can use on Azure, and also the historic answers. So that's how it looks like in the raw format.
Wow, this is really cool because it's basically like a cognitive service. Well, you've integrated cognitive service, but it's like a cognitive services that's trained on your specific task, your specific problem, if you're using Verseagility. Is that right?
Correct, yeah. If you want to have it that way, it's also an API at the end of the day, and you can have it custom made. If you do it for a customer, for example, it's really with their specific domain. So in different kind of domains and use cases, you might have different vocabulary, which are sometimes not fully supported by a pre-built service like cognitive service, but this is really how you can make it completely custom. Yeah.
This is really cool. Well, Timm, thanks so much. Make sure everyone, if you want to check it out, go to github.com/Microsoft/Verseagility. Thank you so much, Timm, for being with us. And thank you so much for watching. We're learning all about ramping up your custom NLP tasks with Verseagility. Thank you so much for watching, and hopefully we'll see you next time. Take care.